Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 3, Episode 18, San Francisco. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happened within this episode. So the episode starts with Phoebe and Prue downtown, and we learn that Prue was searching for unnatural activity and that had lit up as a hotspot, so that's why they're there, though they don't know what the unnatural activity is. But they happen across um, a man fighting with someone over a box, saying that he needs more, he needs more. The box is knocked out of the hand when Prue and Phoebe interfere, and the man is so desperate that he runs into the street and gets hit by a bus. Prue collects the box, tells Daryl what happened, that the man who was hit by a bus obviously was driven there due to an influence, and that she'll let Daryl know once they know more. They give their statements to another officer. Phoebe is flirted with, but initially declines it, and says that she's seeing someone, though when she was speaking with Prue, she did note that she hasn't been able to see much of Cole recently because he's been on the run from various bounty hunting demons, and that he only really pops in for physical activity before popping back out again. And, she's starting to feel a bit insecure about that because it's starting to feel like it's less about love and more about a booty call. And so there's that. They take the box, they bring it home, and they start to plan to look into the Book of Shadows. We learn that Piper is a bit insecure about the elders potentially interfering and taking Leo away again if she's not the perfect wife, so she's been overcompensating a bit and has a full feast made up in the kitchen. And while they are talking there, Lucas is approached by his agent, and basically the agent informs him that the box of sins was stolen, but they did get, this investor businessman's soul. And that is where we first learn that it is to do with the seven deadly sins. When they check the book, they learn that a human who was consumed by sin in their life is then, after death, forced essentially to infect others with the seven deadly sins, and that is who Lucas is. And the man that got hit by the bus was infected by greed. And of course, they then hear a noise downstairs. They head down. Lucas has basically invaded the manor, taken the box, and he infects each of them with a sin, which at first they don't really feel the effects of. And Prue suggests maybe because they're magical, they don't have effects. But slowly we see that that is not the case as we start to see. Well, basically, Phoebe gets hit with lust, Piper with gluttony, Leo with sloth, and Prue with pride. And then there is on the news that there's a pastor holding a hostage wanting a Jaguar, um, a Jag car. And so Prue and Phoebe go to look at that while Piper stays with Leo, who is on the couch watching TV. And he flips to the shopping channel and she picks up the phone. So Phoebe and Prue head out to the scene, and Prue decides to run into the hostage situation. She manages to save the hostage, beat up the pastor, have Daryl hide the pastor away, and she's very assured that she did an amazing job. And while she was doing that, Phoebe snuck away with the cute officer from the morning, and they were making out, which of course is something that Daryl catches them doing. Daryl sends the officer to basically turn in his shield. He gets suspended for it, and then he is infected with wrath. And obviously, the pastor who was holding the hostage for a car was infected with envy. So we return back to the manor, and basically, Piper has gone crazy and ordered a bunch of stuff that they don't need, filling up the entire first floor of the manor with all manner of things. And she has also used magic, but claims it's not personal gain because they need all of those things. Leo has orbed upstairs to take a nap. And Phoebe, of course, is getting premonitions off of a button that she took off the officer's shirt because, of course. It is also noted at one point earlier in the episode, she does go have a meeting with her professor where she starts making moves on him, which is how she first figures out that she has been infected with the lust. Well, and then the officer comes to attack Phoebe as he's been infected with anger or wrath. He comes in and basically starts attacking. Phoebe manages to sacrifice herself for Piper. Piper, then, who is injured, cares more about saving Phoebe, so she runs up the stairs to find Leo, or rather limps up the stairs to find Leo, who cares more about Piper than being lazy, therefore his sin is removed. Piper tells him to heal Phoebe first, her sin is removed. Phoebe's sin was removed when she sacrificed herself to save Piper, so he ends up healing them both, and they've discovered that Prue has been kidnapped. And then we see Prue with Lucas, who is basically holding her hostage and talking to her about how pride is the one sin that you can't beat. And he's trying to convince her to tell him where the pastor is, and then he'll remove her sin for her. But she's refusing. He then, to try to intimidate her, opens up using a staff the Ton of Lake of Endless Torment, the Pit of Endless Torment, which is like an endless pit in the floor, and she decides that she'll win and he'll lose if she just jumps in, so she does so. Luckily, this is when Leo and her sisters arrive. Leo saves her. She fights about him, saying that she had it all under control. They then infect Lucas with the remaining sin balls and throw him into the pit of endless despair. And then Prue's sin comes out, and so do the other two, landing back in the box. They throw the box into the pit, and then Prue closes it, and they head to P3, where they talk about how Phoebe managed to get a B on her paper because she turned the incident that she had into an ethical experiment, or an experiment on ethics. Then Piper decides that she really isn't going to try to be a perfect wife, that if they want to take Leo, they can try it, but they're not gonna, and that, she'll just be herself, which is great. And then Prue wonders why she wasn't able to get rid of her sin because she had committed several selfless acts. However, as Piper lets her know, pride is the deadliest sin because every act that she did was for the greater glory of Prue, not selfless, and there is no way to do a selfless act while with pride because it will always be for your glory, your name, to satisfy your pride that you are doing it. So you cannot actually be selfless on pride, which is why she couldn't beat pride. And that is where we end this episode. Now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it's now time to rank the episode. As always, we will rank on our two ranking lists, the mostly objective ranking list that uses set values to determine the score, and then the personal ranking list, which is based on my opinion. So that brings us to our mostly objective rank values, and I highlighted those I felt applied to this episode. So to start with, we have the single episode supporting character introduction, which is Lucas, and that's worth 1 point. And then we also have Officer Dean, which is worth another point. So Lucas obviously is the human who in life was consumed by sin and therefore now in his afterlife, his personal hell, as he keeps calling it, is to infect others with sin and then deliver the souls once they have been driven to self-destruction, to evil, and his job is to infect specifically paragons of good with the sins to A, stop the good that they are doing, and then B, lead them to self-destruction so he can give up their souls, as I mentioned before. And then the second single episode supporting character was Officer Dean, who gets infected with anger and flirts with Phoebe at the first crime scene, asking for her number, asking her if she'd like to get a drink. She, of course, says at the time that she's seeing someone, but then once she's infected with lust and returns to the next scene, she gets really excited when she sees him because he is hot, and she calls him Officer Cutie. And then, she basically loses him his job, and he's then infected with anger, attacks them, and ultimately is saved when they defeat Lucas. Which brings us to 2 points. Then we have our multi-season main character growth, which I feel impacts all of the main characters. We have, again, Phoebe, who overcomes the lust by saving Piper and moving her out of the way of Officer Dean, who is trying to shoot her. Then Piper is almost self-destructed by her sin because she ends up getting buried under the stuff that she bought, but she manages to crawl out and she sees that Phoebe is severely injured and she basically limps, crawls her way upstairs to Leo. Leo overcomes his sloth when he sees Piper injured. He considers her more important than his lazing around, and so he jumps up and he basically glows and the sin ball disengages from him. And then she basically he goes to heal her and she basically says, nope, Phoebe's more seriously injured than me, go save her first. And when she's willing to put Phoebe in front of her, her sin which is gluttony, is removed, and they realize it was a selfless act. They go downstairs, they heal Phoebe, and then of course they go to save Prue. And Prue, while she wasn't able to overcome pride because that was impossible, does learn the lesson that, she is a little bit on the proud side and how that can be destructive, and decides that she's going to work on that going forward. Obviously, Phoebe turns the lust into her favor through her paper, and Piper also learns that she has been overcompensating, overdoing it, which is what made her susceptible to gluttony in the first place. And as mentioned, she has, by the end of the episode, decided that she isn't going to try so hard to be the perfect wife, but to be herself. And, if the elders want to try to take Leo again, let them try, essentially. And so each of them has some growth in their character by experiencing and then overcoming the sins that they had, which is worth the 4 points. I'm not going to do 4 times 4 points because it was minor character growth, but each of them had it, which is what makes it worth the points. 4 points for all of their growth together combined. And then we have -3 points, and that, of course, is the main relationship regression or breakup, and this has to do with Phoebe and Cole. We learn at the beginning of the episode that she hasn't seen Cole for a while. He hasn't really been around. He has a valid excuse that he is dodging the source and the bounty hunter sent after him. However, she notes that whenever she does see Cole, he basically shimmers directly to the bedroom, to have physical intimacy, and then he leaves again. And she's starting to feel like it's not love but lust, haha, that is motivating him, and she's starting to feel insecure in the relationship. And so obviously that's a regression to where they were because they were pretty healthy before, but now are a little more on shaky, rocky ground. And Prue does try to reassure her, saying that she has magical certainty that Cole does love her because obviously when she was an empath, she felt Cole falling in love with Phoebe, or that he was in love with Phoebe. And obviously they've had their, you know, she spared him, he came back for her. So, I mean, it's basically he does love her. They know that he loves her, but at the same time, because of the circumstances, she is feeling insecure, and she notes that. And that then means that this episode is a 3 out of 10 episode on the mostly objective rank values. All right, so that brings our season 3 ranking so far in our mostly objective ranking to in first, The Honeymoon's Over, Magic Hour, Sleuthing with the Enemy, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Just Harried, All Hallowell's Eve, Coyote Piper, Blinded by the White Lighter, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, Pre-Witched, Power Outage, Bride and Gloom, Death Takes a Hallowell, Wrestling with Demons, Sight Unseen, then Primrose Empath, and this episode comes in 18th so far, San Francisco. Oh my goodness, is this episode a very strong reason why I have two lists? Because 3 is a travesty. I couldn't really contrive it to be more. Like, I could have faked and, manipulated the score to try to get it higher, but that to me would be disingenuous, and that is why I have two lists. Obviously, I love this episode. I think this episode is the greatest episode of the season. It is the most memorable. It is the most fun. I love the shenanigans they get up to being infected with the sins. I love the concept of them being infected by the sins. I love all like the little moments when they're infected by the sins where they're just acting so out of character but in really humorous ways despite the seriousness of the fact that they are infected by these sins. I also like how the sins are leading them towards self-destruction and how that is shown, how, the guy infected by greed runs in front of a bus because he needs more and he's willing to die to get the box to get more sin. Then you have, of course, the pastor who has envy and he's willing to basically destroy his entire life, to take a hostage, bring all the SWAT team around, all because he wants a car, because he's envious that somebody else happened to have that car. Then you have, of course, Anger, who was the cop, and he is so angry that he comes to attack them. And then when he realizes that he has caused them injuries, he then almost takes his own life. Luckily, Prue is there to stop him, but again, almost self-destructed. With Leo, well, he's too lazy to do anything, so he would probably waste away, and that would be his self-destruction. He'd probably just be too lazy to get up to eat anything and then starve to death. I believe, referencing another series, there was a Supernatural episode where the Seven Deadly Sins also came to play, and the family infected by sloth literally died sitting in front of a TV because they were too lazy to move, to eat, to sleep, to do anything else, and they literally wasted away. And I feel like that would have been Leo's fate had this been a darker series. And then, of course, we had the less, which, of course, at first minimally affects Phoebe by almost getting her kicked out of a class, which would mean that she couldn't graduate, but then takes a more serious turn when she gets Officer Dean fired and his wrath comes back to haunt her because she couldn't help herself due to the lust, and that almost got her killed by inspiring lust in him on the job. And then we had Piper, who just was over consuming, not necessarily just overeating, but just overdoing everything. You know, she's buying things for Leo, buying things for her. She's having champagne because she wants a bit of bubbly to cheer her up. She's eating chocolates. She's on the shopping channel buying a bunch of stuff. Can't wait 6 to 8 weeks for shipping. She uses magic for personal gain. In the attic, she's in self-care mode, you know, doing her nails while wearing a fluffy house coat and then, doing a pedicure and then a light falls into the pedicure and she gets minorly electrocuted. And Prue warns her that if both feet had been in there, that was her self-destruction. Then, of course, once Officer Dean attacks, she ends up buried by all of the things that she has packed into the manor because she overconsumed. She ends up crushed under a crate, which, again, if she hadn't been able to crawl up to get Leo's help, may have resulted in her death eventually under the weight of everything that she had overconsumed. And then Prue jumped into a pit of eternal torment to win because of her pride. So if that's not self-destructive, I don't know what is. But all of it was done in a way that you can see the character growth and everything, but it's also very amusing and you're engaged the entire time. Like I said, the concept was interesting, how they had each of the sins sort of manifest themselves and the consequences of that, and even when they were overcoming them. There was also so the musical guest at the end, when Prue asks what the name of the band is, the band's name is Orgy, coming back to the lust sin, and even that, tying in that tiny detail with the name of the musical guest, was so well done. I cannot think, other than some slight secondhand embarrassment from Phoebe's antics, especially with her professor, which was just really inappropriate, I cannot think of anything bad about this episode. It is probably in my top 10 of the series in its entirety. And definitely, in my opinion, the best of the season, which is why I gave it obviously a 10 out of 10. And the season 3 ranking so far has San Francisco in first, Just Tarried, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, All Hallowell's Eve, Death Takes a Hallowell, Pre-Witched, Bride and Gloom, Magic Hour, Blinded by the White Lighter, The Honeymoon's Over, Sleuthing with the Enemy, The Primrose Empath. Well, there's no just Primrose Empath in 13th. Sight Unseen, Power Outage, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed. Then we have Wrestling with Demons, and in last place so far, Coyote Piper. I got it right that time. And now we come to our series rankings so far, where we're ranking each of the seasons against each other. And starting with our mostly objective rankings, we have season 2 in first place with 75%, season 1 in second place with 73.18%. Then season 3 so far has a total of 136 points out of 220. On our personal ranking side, we have season 1 currently holding first place with 71.50%, season 2 in second with 56.82%, and season 3 is not over, still pending, but has already earned 143 points, tying it with season 1. So, spoilers, but this season is definitely going to be in first once we've completed it. But we don't have the final score yet, so it's 143 so far. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 3, Episode 18, San Francisco. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.